Good morning. The purpose of my presentation today is to discuss a paper entitled A Natural History of Athleticism, Health, and Longevity. It discusses exactly what it says. Let me give you a brief history of the correlation between exercise and lifespan. Hippocrates, who hopefully all of you have heard of, believed that being sedentary was bad, but he also believed that vigorous activity was detrimental to your health. He believed that you needed moderation in all things. Early studies found no correlation between exercise and longevity, but early in the, the late 1900s, early 20th century, studies began to notice that blue-collar workers were living a little bit longer than their white-collar counterparts, but they still believed that vigorous activity was bad for you. Studies from most of Europe were showing that activity was bad for you, but studies from England and America around the same time, when they looked at oarsmen, showed that oarsmen lived a little bit longer than the average person. Other studies that looked at different types of athletes from whatever their given sport was said that because of the selection bias, you couldn't make a determination that the exercise was the cause of their longevity. They said because they were going to live longer to begin with, and they were healthy and they were athletic, that's why they chose to be athletes. But it wasn't really until modern medicine was advanced enough to fight off disease that we started to see a rise in coronary artery disease, because people were actually living long enough to obtain heart disease. Another interesting study, it was a Danish study, showed that their elite athletes had a 39% lower risk of death before the age of 50, but it showed no reduced risk of death after age 50. It did not say whether or not they continued to exercise. Anyway, the study that I chose looked at 52,000 men who attended Harvard or the University of Pennsylvania from 1916 until 1950. They followed the students for 16 years and tried to determine causes of mortality. They stratified the students, because all 52,000 were being studied at the same point in time, into 4 age categories. They found that college athletes had a reduced risk of heart disease before the age of 55, but that after age 55 it didn't matter unless they had maintained their physical activity, in which case they had a 62% lower chance of obtaining heart disease than their sedentary counterparts. Conversely, the students who were sedentary when they were in college, if they began an exercise regimen and were exercising moderate to vigorously, they lowered their risk of coronary heart disease by 61%, which is almost identical to the ones that maintained it throughout. They did note that as a group, to receive a reduction in your risk for coronary heart disease, you needed to expend at least 2,000 calories a week from exercise. Similar to that, but equally as interesting, is that the persons who were exercising and expending about 1,500 calories a week from vigorous exercise had a death rate of about 120 per 10,000 people. And the less vigorously active group that still was exercising needed to expend about twice as many calories, or 3,000 per week, to stratify themselves in that same group and obtain the same benefit from it. So the vigorous activity group actually had to burn half as many calories. And then, of course, the old men that they interviewed all reported a higher quality of life and were more likely to be happy than those who were just old and not fit.